The early 90s were a simpler time for gaming. The industry just went through a major transition. The first shots of the 16-bit war were being fired, and damn, we were easily impressed with all the blast processing, Mode 7, and CD-based add-ons. Overall, it was a more innocent time. A gentler time. Holy shit, did you see that? Yeah, it was a simpler time. And it was gentler, until a little game called Mortal Kombat came in and shook things up. All it took was 4 guys from Midway Games 10 months to completely turn the video gaming industry on its head. Things would never be the same again. Soon, we'd have a rating system, more mature themes, and would see the rise of some of the most dastardly villains in video game history. It was truly a game changer. But we're not going to talk about that game today. No, we got more unusual things to discuss, like the posers, the other guys, the Klones with a K, because we're edgy like that. If Mortal Kombat was John McClane, these games would be the fat security guards that get blown away in the opening credits. Come on, you know how this works. Mortal Kombat was insanely successful and launched a multi-million-dollar franchise, all with a low price tag to boot. Don't seem shocked when everybody and their kid brother decides they want to capitalize on its success. One of the most well-known clones is probably the most ironic. Street Fighter the movie. The game. Yeah, definitely a mouthful, but it gets better. Street Fighter already had a metric ton of copycats, so the fact that it would actively copy its own main competitor is pretty crazy. Not to mention, it starred none other than Jean-Claude Van Damme, the same actor who was supposed to star in the first Mortal Kombat game back when it was supposed to be a brawler. But when the deal fell through, the creative team was left scrambling to salvage the game. And what a game they salvaged from it. The technique used to create the game's graphics was to photograph the real actors and stuntmen performing all the character movements. The programmers would then digitize the footage and use it to create the character models, or sprites. This contrasted against Street Fighter 2's more traditional pixel-made character art. In this case, every actor in the film came in on their days off to be digitized into the game. Van Damme, Ming-Na Wen, Kylie Minogue, Kenya Sowada? Whatever. Unfortunately, Raul Julia was too busy battling cancer to take part in the game, but he was there in spirit. And by in spirit, I of course mean he haunts every copy of the game. What was that? After digitization was finished, 2 separate teams went to work on different versions of the game. The console edition was created in-house at Capcom, while the arcade edition was made by Chicago-based Incredible Technologies. While the console edition played like a slower, more awkward version of Super Street Fighter 2, the arcade version was like an insane hybrid of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Everything from the animation, feel of the characters, and the over-the-top abuse of juggling screams combat. Not to mention direct shoutouts and blinking you miss the secrets, like Akuma. Just looking for the bad. Yeah, it's kind of like if Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat met at a dive motel, had angry rivalry sex, and this game was the result. Oh, and Mortal Kombat drank heavily during the pregnancy, thus explaining the broken game mechanics. Okay, that was a little harsh. On the gradient scale of Mortal Kombat clones, Street Fighter the movie is actually toward the top. And as for it standing as a Street Fighter game, at least it's better than Fighting Street. It's like, that's great and all, but what about the fatalities? If the Super NES taught us anything, it's that Mortal Kombat minus fatalities equals pointless. What would you say to over 2,000 fatalities? Tattoo Assassins is the brainchild of Data East pinball executive Joe Kamenkow and Bob Gale, producer and co-writer of the Back to the Future series. Yeah, I cannot make this shit up. So you'd think that having a Hollywood screenwriter on a project would lead to a good story. Well, it's about tattoos with the power to fight each other. Yeah. So some fat Asian guy in an adult diaper had a horrible run-in with a box of permanent markers, thus causing him to lose his sanity. In his rainbow alcohol-fueled madness, he discovers mystical ink that, when turned into tattoos, can give people special powers for murder, as well as making you look like a complete tool in social situations. Rather than bestowing the powers on awesome people, adult diaper guy dropped off the ink at a random truck stop / rave club and let nature take its course. Thus, we end up with characters such as Lame Failed Rocker, Fu Manchu Asian Guy, White Amazonian Chick, Offensive Native American Stereotype, World-Class Stripper, Douchebag Hacker, and Nancy Kerrigan. Yeah, read the description. It's Nancy fucking Kerrigan. And as for the 2,000 fatalities, well, there probably really weren't that many, but the ones we got were freaking insane. I mean, look at these things. Mortal Kombat seems pretty classy by comparison. In fact, this game directly attempted to beat Mortal Kombat at its own game by including nudalities, something only rumored in Midway's series. You see, Data East had Mortal Kombat so dead in their crosshairs that they actually hired none other than Daniel Pesina, aka Johnny Cage, to appear in an attack ad that would ultimately get the actor fired from the series. Sadly, this would all be for nothing, because the game was ultimately never released. The official word from Data East was that it just couldn't compete against other games like Killer Instinct, or Primal Rage, or Math Blaster, or pretty much any game that doesn't make the player want to surgically remove their own hands. At least that's what the press release said. Remember about a minute and a half ago when I said this was masterminded by an executive from the pinball division? Yeah, that was pretty much the start of this game's downfall. The whole operation was a clusterfuck from the word go and everybody knew it. In an interview years later, one of the programmers actually admitted that the team knew this game was awful, but fought any suggestion to make changes because they didn't want to work on that damn thing anymore. Tattoo Assassins would be lost to the void for years until intrepid adventurers would discover a near-complete build of the game and release the ROM online for all to experience the sheer joy of launching a turkey out of their ass.
Derek wins.
So if overdosing on fatalities couldn't improve on the Mortal Kombat formula, maybe adding dinosaurs could. This is Primal Rage, aka the only thing Atari did in the 90s that was not a miserable failure. Using old school stop motion techniques, the programmers at Atari made probably the best Mortal Kombat clone, well, ever. This game just brought something interesting to the table, like unique moves, gross finishers, and even human volleyball. When taken for what it is, a fun exercise in digital lunacy, you can't not love this game. Not to mention, it's probably the most prolific game not called Madden in console history. It was ported to pretty much any system that could handle it, including PlayStation, Sega Saturn, 3DO, Atari Jaguar, what it was, Super NES, Genesis, PC, Game Boy, Game Gear, Amiga, and the Sega Master System? Who was playing Sega Master System in 1994? Well, like all questions of strange origin, the answer is Brazil! Yes, the market for the Sega Master System was still going strong there, and games like Primal Rage were still being released to satisfy owners of the console that time forgot. Unfortunately, finding a non-gimped copy of the arcade game is almost impossible due to security lockout that would make the CIA blush. You see, any attempt to emulate this game will automatically handicap it. It'll recolor the blood, disable the fatalities, it'll even break the combo system. To this day, only a small group of people actually know the security lockout code, and most of those guys left the industry years ago. Well played, Atari. Well played. Last but definitely not least is Way of the Warrior. Easily the strangest game on the entire list.
Heart indeed, for I tell a tale known to precious few, and extend a challenge to compete with the greatest warriors the world has ever known. The victor will gain entrance in the Book of Warriors, and his name will be known for centuries to come.
You're probably wondering why I saved this game for last, and that question has two answers. For starters, it's batshit insane. I mean, just look at this game. You've got Backyard Samurai fighting the black guy from accounting, while White Zombie plays on Eternal Loop and a Velociraptor is rocking out on a throne with a dodgeball in his hand. If you ever wanted to see what it's like to slowly lose your sanity, marathon this game for an afternoon. The other reason I saved this game for last is because of who made it. This little company no one heard of at the time named Naughty Dog. Yeah, that Naughty Dog. You see, once upon a time, Naughty Dog was a tiny company on the verge of oblivion. They desperately needed to put out a successful game or they were going to go under. So as a last-ditch effort, they started work on Way of the Warrior. Seeing as how they had no money at the time, they cast themselves and their friends as characters in the game. Costumes were made from a bizarre combination of Salvation Army clothes, bed sheets, and Happy Meal toys. The mocap was all done in one of the programmer's tiny apartments, making it necessary to open the door and film the actor from down the hallway. As is usually the case with these things, the neighbors all suspected them of making porn. Early builds of the game were so promising that Universal Interactive snatched up distribution rights and signed Naughty Dog to a 3-game contract. Those 3 games would turn out to be the Crash Bandicoot series, and the rest, as they say, is history. What set Naughty Dog's game apart from garbage like Tattoo Assassins was the sincerity of it. Sure, it had made some dude's garage roughness to it, but had it never existed, we never would have been able to enjoy and experience all the things that Naughty Dog was really capable of. Well, that's it for this episode. This is by no means a comprehensive study of the genre. Including everything would have made this a 90-minute long documentary, and, well, who's crazy enough to do that?